Persuasive Selling and Power Negotiation. Continued. Disc 8.
Colette Carlson has delivered programs to thousands of individuals all over the world. Whether she's opening for Susie Orman to an audience of 3,500 women or speaking in-house at Fortune 100 companies to include Microsoft, Boeing, Pepsi, and Cisco, Colette brings her one-of-a-kind wit and wisdom to every program. Along with being featured in Success Magazine, she's appeared in top motivational movies, authored numerous publications, and holds a master's degree in human behavior, which helps being the mother of 2 teenage daughters. Colette recognizes that every day is the perfect day to begin to speak your truth. Please welcome Colette Carlson.
It was May of 2005 when 6 other mothers and their 12-year-old daughters flew up to San Francisco, joining my daughter and I, along with thousands of other Girl Scouts crossing the Golden Gate Bridge, representing their passage from juniors to cadets. Being the type of mother that I am, I reminded my daughter of my own bridging ceremony 30 years earlier in a church basement. After jumping over a small mirror, representing a stream of water, my troop celebrated with a homemade chocolate cupcake and apple juice. How many of you were raised in the days when that was considered a happening party? All 14 of us in our neon green visors survived the windy journey there and back across the bridge before moving on to the next tourist trap, Pier 39. After we grew tired of watching beach seals readjust their sleep position, we found ourselves at Studio 39, a special effects video production store. Well, the manager, when the girls walked in, encouraged all of them to climb up on what looked like a magic carpet that was placed in front of a blue screen. Between the wind machine and his instructions to duck or look to the left, look scared, the girls' actions gave the appearance of interacting with landmarks of San Francisco rolling behind them. During the ride, a picture was even snapped when they were soaring over the Golden Gate Bridge with the words San Francisco and the date emblazoned across the bottom in gold. While the girls were having fun, I initiated a conversation with one of the clerks behind the counter. Given that I had an idea where this experience was heading, I asked her if the manager happened to be the owner, and was thrilled to hear her say yes. I had found the decision maker. A few moments later, we're gathered around the TV watching the playback of the finished DVD. In the old days, this was known in sales as the puppy dog close. Give someone the puppy to play with and they're sure to take it home with them. Well, our hysterical laughter almost drowned out the pulsating background music. Well, you don't know what we can find. Why don't you come with me, little girl, on a magic carpet ride? Well, it's about that time that, given our peak emotional involvement and laughter, the manager swoops over to tell us that we can each own one of these DVDs for $30, and then the 5x7 picture is free. Well, I sort of went, ouch, no thanks, and walked away. The other mothers, taking my cue, stayed only long enough to hear him drop his price to $20 for each DVD before following me out. Between airplanes, hotels, food, and incidentals, this practical mom was feeling that this bridging ceremony was turning out to be all money under the bridge, but the other mothers wanted the DVD and photo. After a short discussion, we decided that $15 was the most that they were going to spend. I volunteered to go communicate to the manager. I found and pulled him aside and said, we would like 7 DVDs and 7 pictures for $49, $7 each. Given that this trip has already sucked us dry, this is about all we're able to spend. Personally, I don't even want the DVD, as I just know it'll end up buried in some drawer somewhere. He looked at me for a while and then said, $15 each. I warmly said, Well, I was kind of hoping you'd rather have the $50 for the time and energy you already invested versus nothing, but I understand and appreciate it. Thank you. I turned, took 2 steps before hearing, okay, $10 each. Let me go check with the other ladies, I said, already knowing that they would be thrilled. Upon return, I told the manager, "Whew, it was a tough sell, but we've decided to go for it." He grinned from ear to ear and said, "They'll be ready in 15 minutes. Long before I ever worked for professional sales trainers Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy, and long before I ever attended a boatload of negotiation seminars and read every latest and greatest book I could get my hand on, I always knew that the answer was automatically no if you don't ask. Now, as a businesswoman, I know that sometimes the answer is still no, even when we do ask. But with our time together today, we're going to discuss the 7 strategies to successful negotiation to increase the odds of getting to yes. And this brings us to the first success strategy, the art of negotiation. Why do I believe negotiation is an art rather than a science? Science is when you can duplicate your results with consistency. In other words, you do something, and if you do it exactly the same way, you will get the same results every time. When you negotiate, you can do exactly what I suggest, and you may not get the same results every time. Every situation and every individual you deal with is different, which makes it an art. However, by understanding, internalizing, and applying the strategies and skills I'm going to share with you, you will immediately become a more savvy negotiator. Another reason I believe that negotiation is an art is because your approach is determined by the type of relationship you desire with the other party following the negotiation. In other words, the stronger, healthier relationship you want after the negotiation is over, the more important it is to create a win-win environment. Too many people buy into the sports analogy of negotiation as a win-lose or us against them. But in reality, the hallmark of good negotiation is when all parties involved feel they've reached a successful outcome. And this is called win-win. For example, many of you may have had a mother similar to mine when there was only 1 cupcake left and 2 hungry, screaming children. Her solution? Eat it herself. No. One of us got to cut the cupcake down the middle, and the other child got first choice in picking which half they wanted. We all left feeling like winners, and that is the goal of today's win-win philosophy. Now, if it's been a tough negotiation, you may not walk away with everything you wanted, but the win-win approach means you still walk away pleased with the end result. And that's why it's important to ask yourself at the end of this transaction, what type of relationship do I want with the other people involved? Perhaps if it's a car dealer, you don't care if you have a long-term relationship. However, if it's a business setting and your goal is to develop a long-term friendship, your strategies need to reflect a true win-win approach. I often use an activity in my class to emphasize the role and importance relationships play in a negotiation by putting people into pairs, either becoming A or B, and handing each A or B person a different scenario where they have to negotiate with each other. For example, person A receives scenario number 1, where it states that he was responsible for buying his son a Wii Nintendo game for his upcoming birthday. It was all the kid asked for. Now, the father has been trying to get this all month, but he's been busy, and it turns out the party is now tomorrow. He calls the store, finds out that they have 1 Wii Nintendo left, and asks that it please be put on hold. The manager says he can't do that, but just come quickly. So the father does. As he walks into the store and moves toward the game, Another customer approaches the we, and even though they get there at the exact same moment, the other customer scoops the game into his arms first. Who is that other customer? Well, that's person B, scenario number 2. He needs to buy the Wii game for his niece's birthday party the next day, and everyone is expecting him to show up with it, as they even have a tournament scheduled. I give them a couple of minutes to negotiate with each other, but often the room ends up with people yelling and getting upset with one another. Then I ask them to stop, start over with the same scenarios, except that the other person who wants the Wii game is now also your neighbor that you're close to. So what do you think happens? Often this creates a totally different approach to the negotiation. Voices become softer, there is more questions being asked of one another, and more creative brainstorming takes place to ensure everyone is happy. I've even had one pair suggest that first the we could spend time at party A and then go to party B. The stronger the relationship you desire following the interaction, the more important it is to create a trusting win-win outcome. Because I also teach a course on gender communication, I'm often asked if there is a difference in the way men and women negotiate. The latest research on that subject comes from Linda Babcock and Sarah Lashiver in the 2007 release, Women Don't Ask: The High Cost of Avoiding Negotiation and Positive Strategies for Change. They studied MBA grads at Carnegie Mellon, an Ivy League school, who were going after their first jobs. Now keep in mind that these were recent grads who had even taken a course on negotiation. The men were still 8 times more likely to bargain over starting salary than the women. In fact, the men asked for a 4.3% higher starting salary, while female grads asked for just 2.7% more. And here's the kicker. Suppose that at age 22, an equally qualified man and woman receive job offers for $25,000 a year. The man negotiates and gets his salary offer raised to $30,000. The woman does not negotiate and accepts the job for $25,000. Now, even if each one of them receives identical 3% raises every year throughout their careers, by the time they reach age 60, the gap between their salaries will have widened to more than $15,000 a year, with the man bringing in about $92,000 and the woman only $77,000. Now, while that may not seem like a big spread, remember that the man will have been making more all along, and with his extra earnings over the 38 years totaling $361,000. If the man had simply banked the difference every year in a savings account, earning 3% interest, by age 60, he would have over $568,000 more dollars than the woman. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a chunk of change. If you live here in California, you might even be able to buy a starter home for that amount of money. Think about it. That's a chunk toward retirement, the opportunity to purchase a second home, or pay for one of your own children's college educations. This is an enormous return on investment for a one-time negotiation. All because he asked. Remember, the answer is always no if you don't ask. Well, spurred on by this finding, Linda and a couple other colleagues designed another study to look at the likelihood of men and women to ask for more than they are offered. Once more, they recruited students at Carnegie Mellon for an experiment and told them that they would be paid between $3 and $10 for playing Boggle, which is a game by Milton Bradley. Each research subject was asked to play 4 rounds of the game, and then an experimenter handed him or her $3 and said, "Here's $3. Is $3 okay?" If a subject asked for more money, the experimenters would pay that participant $10, but they would not give anyone more money if he or she just complained about the compensation, because that's an indirect method of asking. The results? Almost 9 times as many male as female subjects asked for more money. Now the question became, did the woman stop themselves from asking for more money because they felt they hadn't played the game as well? That turned out not to be the case. Both male and female subjects rated how well they played the game about equally, meaning that women didn't feel that they should be paid less or should accept less because they played poorly. Interestingly, there were no gender differences in how much men and women complained either about the compensation. The significant factor seemed to be that for men, unhappiness with what they were offered was more likely to make them try to fix their unhappiness by asking for more. In a separate study, when asked to pick metaphors for negotiating, men picked winning a ball game and a wrestling match, while women picked going to the dentist. Now, I don't know about you, but going to the dentist is never something I look forward to doing. And I even like my dentist. He's a pretty good guy. Recently, I had an opportunity to deliver a presentation to a group of litigation attorneys, all of them female. And in preparing for my talk, I spoke separately with 3 or 4 of the attorneys who would be present. A few of them had over 20 years' experience in their field. After much conversation, all 4 shared with me that they have no problem being proactive and fiercely negotiating on behalf of their clients. When I asked, "Is there ever a time you do find yourself hesitant to negotiate?" their answers were similar. When they would be the benefactor of the negotiation, when it came to asking for something for themselves. No problem picking up the phone and negotiating $1 million deal for a client, but the difficulty arose when they wanted to ask their supervisor or partner for better case assignments, additional benefits, or time off. A few of the more seasoned women mentioned that they've worked through those hesitations and have now learned to ask, yet it still feels a bit awkward. And let me remind you, these are attorneys who negotiate for a living. Talking with others following my presentations, I've discovered that too many women are still uncomfortable asking for what they need, want, and deserve, and instead are willing to take what they get. I often hear comments such as, "I'm just happy to be given this opportunity," or, "Well, I don't want my boss to think I'm high maintenance." Yet I believe that there's deeper reasons women aren't asking for what they want, and that's because there's no possible conflict or confrontation in that choice. Yet the price too many women are paying for this feeling of safety and security is way too high. Recently, a woman approached me after a program and told me this story. She was earning 6 figures at her former position, but was looking to gain new experiences when an ideal situation opened up at a major company. She did all the research necessary to get this job. But when they told her they didn't have the budget to pay her what she had been earning, she accepted their word and the position at a lower salary. Due to the volume of work at this company a year later, a second individual was recently hired for a similar position. "Guess what?" she told me. "He started at 6 figures. When I heard it, I even went to the admin who cuts the check to confirm it." "What did you do?" I asked. She said, "I marched into my boss's office, laid out everything I've accomplished this past year, and shared with him that I deserved to be compensated as fairly. Walked out with a $10,000 raise. Sure wish I wouldn't have been so quick to accept the lower offer to begin with." So what does all of this mean to you? If you're a man, know that for some women, it's difficult to negotiate on their own behalf. If you happen to be in a hiring role, don't assume that a woman who doesn't negotiate her salary or benefits won't be a fierce competitor at the boardroom table when negotiating on behalf of the company or someone else. If you're a colleague and believe in a particular woman's capabilities and talents, find ways to back her up Put in a good word for her, share beneficial information, or offer to support some of her proposals. In some circumstances, a woman hasn't had the ability to develop the necessary support networks or organizational backing to influence the other party involved, and your participation can make a difference. If you're a female listener, you need to recognize, sister, that you were born to negotiate. If you've ever managed to get a non-willing parent into an assisted living arrangement or a 2-year-old to pick up their toys, you already know how to negotiate. Anita Roddick, founder of The Body Shop, says, and I quote, "If you can figure out whether a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old should get the last piece of toffee, you can negotiate any contract." Research shows women are just as effective. They simply need to choose to negotiate, choose to get in the game. How do we do this? Well, what I'm suggesting to you is that when you negotiate, you get into a different frame of mind. Treat it as a game that must be played. Just like there are rules to the game Monopoly, there are rules to negotiation. If you're playing Monopoly and someone lands on your property, do you say, "Oh, it's okay. You don't have to pay me"? Or are you more like me? When I play Monopoly, I'm a land baron. It doesn't matter if I'm playing with one of my daughters or an adult my age. If you land on the property and I've got a hotel hopefully sitting there, cough up the dough. It's how you play the game. That's why the first step in any negotiation is the decision to negotiate in the first place. Now that we understand a little bit more about the roles gender, relationships, and win-win outcomes play in the art of negotiation, it's time to move on to strategy number 2. Preparation drives results. Negotiation is like most situations you will encounter in life. The more prepared you are, the easier it will be. If you've ever had to go off-site to a conference, think about all the planning that went into getting you there. You had to block the time, coordinate travel arrangements, possibly organize numerous childcare issues in your absence, complete certain projects or assignments at work, let others know you're going to be gone, and a multitude of other details. And this is prior to the conference even starting. It takes a lot of preparation, and the more prepared you are, the more likely your trip will go smoothly. It doesn't really matter if you're preparing for a dinner party, a speech, or a major negotiation. Preparation is the key to pretty much everything. If possible, do more homework than the other guy. I believe whoever does the greater amount of preparation prior to walking into the bargaining room will be the one to walk out with more of what they want. So where do you start? Well, the first step to getting prepared is to know your goals or desired outcomes. Too often, when I ask individuals prior to going into a negotiation, what do you really want to accomplish? What do you want to walk away with? The answer is, I'm not sure. I don't know. In negotiation, just like in life, I don't know gets you nowhere. How can you arrive at what you want when you don't know what you want? You need to figure it out, and no one can figure it out but you. I don't know what you want. I don't know what's important to you. I don't know what you need to be successful. Only you do. Not only is it important to be clear on what you want so that you can set up your chances of walking away from the bargaining table with your needs met, but having clarity helps you stay focused. It's easy to get swept up and caught up in emotion during the actual negotiation process. Having a clear vision of your outcome will stop you from being swished and swayed in directions you hadn't intended. For example, how many of you have ever gone to the grocery store without a list and hungry? What happens? Well, if you're like me, you end up cruising the aisles, spending oodles more time than you have available, and end up getting emotionally invested in the double-stuffed Oreos on the end cap that are screaming to you, Please pick me. Don't the Oreos talk to you too? What about when you show up at the store with a list? What do you end up bringing home? Yeah, exactly what's on the list. You didn't get distracted by other items, nor spend too much emotion talking yourself out of the cookies. Knowing why you want something also creates clarity and focus. For example, I had a girlfriend who was entering a salary negotiation with a major corporation. She was adamant on negotiating for a specific salary, and I asked her why that amount of money was so darn important to her. And she said, well, you know I love to travel, and I'm tired of not being able to take off on extended vacations and explore the way I want to, in style. After hearing her, I asked, well, what type of a vacation package does the company currently offer? Or what have others done to get more vacation time? She drew a blank. Not only does she need to know that walking into the negotiation, but she also might consider using additional vacation time as a bargaining tool over other less important perks. Knowing what you want and why you want it before going into a negotiation keeps you focused and helps you control your emotions. Let's say you're still not sure of what you want or what's available. You must do more homework. Pick up the phone and start researching. Call individuals who are already in the situation you want to be in and ask them targeted questions. For example, many years ago when I was contemplating going into sales, I randomly called individuals from both large and small companies and said, "Hi, my name is Colette and I need your help." I found that phrase to be very effective, for that matter, both in negotiation and sales. People want to help. I'm considering a major career change into sales, and I'd like to ask you 4 or 5 pointed questions to determine if this is the right path for me. Look, I'm certain you're busy and appreciate any insight you could provide, so I'm happy to work around your schedule. Would you be willing to give me some advice? Advice is another great word because people love to give it. Most of the time, people responded by saying, "Sure." And then I was certain to send a handwritten note thanking them for their time. And I also stayed in touch with them to let them know that I did decide to move forward with sales and what company I selected. This was a great way to start building my network too. One of the questions I always ask others when it comes to getting input on anything from salary negotiation to landing a book deal is, what have you done or asked for that is creative, clever, or different? Some of the ideas that have come from that one question alone have saved me tons of time, energy, and money over the years. For example, a couple of years ago, I was in the market for a new car. I did my homework on the net, read all the reviews, and looked at various prices for new models across the country. I chose my color and style and knew the price. However, only through talking with others and asking what they had done that was creative, clever, or different, did I learn about the Costco program, which basically eliminates much of the hassle because the car is set at a percentage price above the manufacturer's suggested retail price. There's no haggling at all, and I got a great price to boot. So when I walked onto the showroom floor and I was asked, "Are you looking for anything in particular?" I was able to say, "Yes, I am. Here's the make, the model, and the style that I'm looking for. And oh, by the way, I would like to use the Costco program to purchase this vehicle." You could almost see the salesman's eyes drop because he's only getting a certain percentage. It was only through doing my homework. If negotiating salary is a concern for you, as much as it is for many of my program attendees, there are some great resources to get general salary information. These include salary.com, salaryexpert.com, jobstar.org, execunet.com. And also you can find good information from the United States Department of Labor's National Compensation Survey. Keep in mind, too, that many professional organizations also publish compensation surveys broken down by location, and job title. If you wish to work for an outside company and want to find out the salary range for a position you're interested in, call a couple of your colleagues from other organizations and ask them. Rather than asking people how much they earn in a similar position, which can be awkward, try asking what they think someone in your position should earn. But be sure to ask men as well as women. Since women typically make only 76% of what men make, if you talk only to women, you'll probably get inaccurately low estimates. Besides using your social network, be so bold as to call a couple of other companies, or for that matter, the company that you're going to go interview with if it's large enough to go unnoticed. Determine an individual with a similar position or one you think might have access to that information and say, "My name is Mary, and I'm hoping you can help me. I'm currently in the market for a position with the following responsibilities. It usually carries a title such as Vice President of Marketing, and I'm curious what you feel the going rate for such a position might be." If they're responsive, ask more questions. If you were me, is there anything you would be certain to ask about if you were interviewing for a similar position? Would you recommend any professional associations where I might learn more about this field? Have you ever heard of anyone asking for anything unusual or creative? Gathering this information, doing your homework, will allow you then to realistically evaluate how you stack up against the competition. By doing your homework, you're going to be able to realistically evaluate how you stack up against the competition for candidates with your skills. And dig deep to figure out what you want. For example, don't make the mistake of thinking that compensation means only salary. Consider other aspects of the job that might improve your standard of living. Higher bonus structure, tuition waivers, transportation benefits, stock options, working from home part-time. If you're buying a home, you may think the negotiation only centers around the price you offer. But remember, you can negotiate how soon escrow will close, what furniture or appliances stay, and minor work and repairs. In the words of the wise Persian merchant, everything's negotiable. Once you know what you want, it's important for you to be able to state why you're interested in the terms you propose and back it up with facts. Presenting offers based on firm, logical reasoning helps create buy-in and keeps the focus on creating fair solutions, that can be proven to meet underlying needs. For example, when I was in high school, I had the earliest curfew out of all my friends. Although I always asked to stay out later, my parents' answer was usually no. It wasn't until I was able to provide a logical case to them, backed up with facts, that I was able to increase my curfew, rather than just whine and yell out every teenager's mantra, "It's not fair!" I came up with valid arguments. My junior year, I sat my folks down and said, "For the past 2 years, I've had a curfew of 11 p.m., and now I would like to be able to stay out until midnight, and here's why. Over the past 2 years, I've been home by 11 p.m. at least 99% of the time. And the couple of times I was late, it was out of my control. The parent that was driving showed up late, and another time the event ran over. And remember, you guys, I called immediately. In addition, my classes at school have only become more demanding, and I'm still keeping up my high grade point average. You expect me to contribute more around the house now, and I've been doing so without receiving an increase in allowance. I believe I have shown you to be a very capable person and feel that I'm ready to accept the responsibility that comes with this curfew. Can we give it a trial run for a month?" Now, these arguments may not compare to what can go on in a boardroom, but it's based on the same structure. Using logical reasoning backed up with facts to get buy-in. Do any of you work with teams on projects? There's a group of you that all sometimes need to get your needs negotiated with another. Well, if so, Each of you must take into account each other's goals and the team's goals and their level of importance. I worked with an association where both an underwriter and an asset manager from the same team negotiated deals with outside developers. The challenge was that both the underwriter and asset manager had different goals for the project. And so it was imperative that they truly understand each other's goals and have a negotiation themselves, reaching an agreement internally before starting the outside negotiation piece. Otherwise, they'd end up sabotaging their own negotiation. In figuring your goals, you must identify your wiggle room, where you're comfortable compromising, and your bottom line, or BATNA, as it is sometimes called. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement, and it is the course of action that will be taken by you if the current negotiations fail and an agreement cannot be reached. You can determine your BATNA by taking a look at your alternatives, ranking them according to your needs and level of importance, and then deciding where you draw the line. You never want to accept a worse resolution than your BATNA, which means you need to know your bottom line walking in the door. This is part of your preparation, your homework. For example, to effectively negotiate a healthy salary increase with your current employer, you might consider asking yourself the following questions. Can I find a higher paying job elsewhere that I would enjoy as much? Should I interview with a few other companies and attempt to get some offers, or at least speak with an executive recruiter in order to have some alternatives? If I'm offered a better retirement plan or additional health benefits instead of a raise or money, would that allow me to feel okay? What will I do if they don't give me the amount I'm looking for? By thinking through all your alternatives up front, you can remain calm and emotionally detached through the actual negotiation, again increasing the likelihood that you'll end up with what you want. Once you're clear on what you want, why you want it, your wiggle room, and bottom line, the next step of preparation requires you find out as much as you can about the party you will be negotiating with. Who are they, and what do they want? First of all, it's important to make sure you're negotiating with the person who has the authority to make the decision. I can still remember early on in my sales career when I hadn't done a good enough job qualifying the buyer prior to the negotiation. After a lot of give and take, and feeling that we had reached a successful conclusion, my buyer said, "Well, Colette, I'm not the only one that needs to take a look at this. I'm going to have to run it by my supervisor." My heart sank, but I learned a great lesson. Always do your best to ensure that you're working with, or at least including, the final decision maker in the conversation. Now I ask up front, is there anyone else aside from yourself who will be involved in making the final decision? Or how are decisions like this reached? What is the process? If you're interviewing with the Human Resources Department about a future position, you might ask, are there other departments that will be involved in this hiring decision? All of those qualifying questions still show respect to the person you're speaking with, but it also lets you know who else might need to be present at the table when negotiations begin. Preparation includes gathering answers to questions such as, who are all the people that I'll be negotiating with, and what are their levels of authority? You want to know who makes those decisions, who has more power over another, who can influence the outcome of this negotiation, who might not want this to happen and therefore block the desired outcome I want. Who is someone that actually would be on my team that could help facilitate getting the conclusion we're both looking for? Who's affected by this decision? What motivates their desires? What are their real values? What is it they want down deep? Maybe not just what they're going to tell me. What is their communication style? What is their past behavior? Why are they even negotiating with our company? Are they in negotiation with anyone else? Is timing even a factor in this deal? Prior knowledge of others' needs, habits, motivations, and desires can help you develop options and agreements. And with the internet, you can find out so much information right at your fingertips. For example, you might consider studying the history of the company to give you perspective. Create a Google alert for organizational news. Talk to employees, visit the facilities, compare prices or services of competition. No matter how minuscule a piece of information is, it can be used to help you develop your plan. If you've gathered all of the information and prepared to the degree that we've spoken of, at this point, you need to study the facts, get the information you're looking for one way or another, prioritize the needs, and develop a plan. And when you first create your plan, a great question to ask yourself is, what goals do we both have in common? This is a great place to begin the negotiation. And by gathering this information, you can design offers that are great for you, but at the same time meet the needs of the other side. In negotiating, your strength and power lie in focusing on what you can do for the other party, not what they can do for you. You must sincerely believe that doing business with you is a plus for the other party. Through preparation, you have hopefully found out what the other party needs, and now you can tie what you want to them getting what they want, which puts you in a much better place. The next question to answer is, what goals do I have in conflict with the other party? For example, if you wanted an increase in salary, you wouldn't just walk into your supervisor or human resources department and say, I deserve a cost of living raise and want 15% more, and expect to be successful. Why? Well, you know that this is in conflict with human resources goals of keeping overall salary costs down. By taking the time to figure out where there's conflict in a negotiation, you can anticipate possible objections and find ways to overcome the other party's concerns. Let's remain with the salary example. You need to find ways to overcome the conflict. A great place to start is to look at what's important to any company in this situation. Therefore, is there anything you can bring up as an example of you helping the business increase revenues, reduce costs, or increase customer loyalty? Determine what measurable contributions you've made over the past year and be able to articulate those successes to overcome this conflict. You need factual backup. For example, I enjoy contributing to this company, and I also know that the company is benefiting from my ability to manage multiple supervisors without additional support, locate vendors to reduce costs by 3%, and serve as an effective liaison with external clients. In other words, you gave them 3 major benefits of what you do at work and how it benefits the bottom line. I am looking to receive a salary of X. Another idea. Mr. Johnson, my work here is saving the company money, making things more efficient for the entire staff, and helping to accomplish our stated goals of reducing costs and raising revenues this year. In light of my proven contributions, I am asking for a 15% raise. You'll notice in both examples, the conversation centered around common goals, and backup support was provided to overcome any conflict. Later in the program, I'll provide detailed negotiation tactics, but let me give you a few salary-specific tactics while we're on this subject. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you're interviewing with a new company and the interviewer says, "Tell me, John, what kind of a salary are you expecting?" Now, some of us have been taught to postpone that conversation or even dodge the issue until they give you some sort of range or have offered you the position. But sometimes you still need to respond. In those cases, you might say, I'm very excited about working for this company, and I think I have a lot to bring. I'm sure we can work together to agree on a salary that suits both of us. Even after using this phraseology, you still may be pressed for a more detailed answer. This is why doing your homework is so important. If you feel you need to provide a number, take the higher end of the salary range you uncovered and ask for that. If they share with you that the range, for example, happens to be between $45,000 and $50,000 for that position, say, I was hoping for between $50,000 and $55,000. Or you could say, that comes close to what I was expecting. The reason that you do this is because right away, if they want you, they're already thinking that they must bring you in at the high end of their range. Another tactic is to repeat the dollar amount without any emotion in your voice. For example, if they say, well, our range or our offer is $50,000. In other words, just repeat it without any emotion in your voice and then zip it. Don't say anything and just wait. Often that technique alone can get you more bucks because it plants a seed of doubt in the interviewer's mind. Perhaps I offered too little and I better up the ante because we want him or her. Another idea is to ask, where does this offer fall within the range allotted for the same or similar positions throughout the company? Let's say that they simply don't offer you enough money. Say, this offer is simply not reflective of the work that I would be doing, the time away from family and friends, and what I am worth based on industry standards. Or, based on my understanding of the position, the company's needs, and the skills and experience I bring, I feel I'm worth X amount of dollars more than what you're offering me. And then zip it. Remember, if you've done your homework, you can recommend other ways to walk away satisfied. Remember, you can ask for perhaps tuition reimbursement, a more sophisticated health care plan, gym membership, transportation cost, stock options, half days off every other week, 35 versus 40 hours a week. You never know until you ask. Keep in mind, if you're good at what you do, companies will move mountains to keep you. You're irreplaceable. Think about what it costs to replace an employee today. I've read articles in Money magazine that said that to replace an employee costs 1.5 times their salary. And another article in a human resource publication stated that the number averaged around $17,000, but jumped to $38,000 if the employee was earning over $60,000. Either way, that's a lot of money to replace you. This information could even be an effective negotiating tool. You might say to your supervisor, I've read studies that suggest that it costs 1.5 times my salary to replace me. Therefore, how can you and I get creative to compensate me for the difference we're speaking of here? Would you consider a couple extra vacation days? Would you consider early Fridays every other week? Get creative. During a program, I'm often asked what to do when you can only find limited information on the other party. Sometimes this does happen, and just know that during those circumstances, you are operating at a loss. If possible, try to set up an exploratory type meeting to get to know one another before engaging in any particular negotiation. That way you can at least get a feel for the other person, start to see where they're coming from, what their values might be, how they communicate. Or if you're in a buying versus a selling situation, utilize what I call the rule of 3. Call and gather information from at least 3 similar businesses before making a decision. talk to at least 3 different people in the industry. For example, when I used to do a lot of party planning in my early 20s, I worked with many caterers. These were large-scale events going into the thousands. And even though sometimes I knew I wanted to work with a particular vendor, I would still seek out, speak to, and interview at least 2 others, gather their menus and their costs. That way, when I was working with the caterer that I really did want, and they gave their price, I was able to use the other 2 companies' menus and costs as leverage to get them to come down a bit more so that I still was working with the caterer that I wanted to, but at a reduced fee. We just purchased a new jacuzzi cover. Same deal. I had never bought one before. Didn't know. So I called 3 different suppliers and compared apples to apples covers so that they would be similar, and then found out who was the least expensive, who was the most expensive, and the person in the middle. Since all companies looked the same, I ended up working with the company in the middle and was actually, through leveraging, able to get him to go down to the lowest rate possible. That's because I utilized the rule of 3. It's tougher to negotiate when you don't have access to the information you need. And in fact, if you were attending one of my live negotiation programs, I would ask you to break into groups of 5 people, or smaller groups depending on the audience size. And here is your assignment. You are part of a rescue team, and all of you collectively must decide which one of the following people you can save from the island. It's my own version of Survivor. You can only save one of these people. You can't save 2. You can't choose to replace one of the people, stay on the island, and let them go. There's only 1 individual allowed, and I give them about 5 minutes for this activity. The choices of who they can save include a 35-year-old mother who's married with 4 children, a 65-year-old priest who reminds others of Mother Teresa for all the good work he does, 44-year-old female doctor who discovered an important cure for cancer, a 17-year-old female that is 2 months pregnant, 21-year-old male student who has just enlisted in the service, the military service. This group activity can get a little heated because based on your own values, oftentimes determines who you want to save. I mean, we're asking people to make a rational decision, but it's really, in this case, an emotional decision. And if I was in a negotiation, I could argue any one of these positions, but first I need to see what your position is. For example, some people want to choose the 17-year-old female that is 2 months pregnant, and they say that because they feel that they're saving 2 lives instead of 1. Yet I could negotiate that the 17-year-old female sure wasn't very responsible since she got herself pregnant, and so she may not be the best choice to bring off the island. Depending on who's in the audience, oftentimes creates different results in this activity. If it's primarily an audience of women, they are very quick to save the 35-year-old mother who's married with 4 children. Their reasoning is that without too much information, they do know that she has 4 children, and that would be 4 individuals that would have to deal with her loss in addition to her husband. If it's a predominantly male audience, they let the 35-year-old mother hang out on the island and they save someone else because their argument is that she's married. There's someone right there to take care of the kids. She's not as necessary. Some people want to save the 44-year-old female doctor because they feel if she discovered such an important cure for cancer that she very well may be able to discover other cures which can save hundreds of lives. Other people feel that that doctor has already come up with her 15 minutes of fame, so to speak, and the likelihood of her finding another important cure probably won't happen, and so she's done great work, but she can stay on the island. Some people want to bring the 21-year-old male student who enlisted in the service home. They feel he has a long life ahead of him, and he was obviously an individual who believes in service, considering he had enrolled in the military. But others argue that, given the fact that our country is at war, that if he entered the service, he may end up dying anyway, and that was a risk he was willing to take, so they don't choose him. You can see how this activity really boils down to one thing. People, when they don't have enough information, always fall back to making decisions based on their own personal values. When people don't have enough decision criteria or information, they resort back to their values. The more you know about the people across the bargaining table from you, the better able you are to determine where they're coming from and why they're making certain decisions. Sometimes in negotiation programs, this is called the under-the-table negotiation, based on who they are as an individual. I had a woman walk up to me after a program and say, okay, now I get why my husband, when he goes overseas to sell to a financial firm, always spends so much time up front hanging out with these people before they ever even sit down at the negotiating table. I just saw that as a big waste of time. Now I realize they're trying to figure each other out for the negotiation. Okay, let's apply some of what we've learned so far in the following example. Let's say that it's your goal to work from home. And I'll choose this because I often hear from my attendees, especially when delivering my program, The Truth About Balance, that they would love to work from home. So you've decided that this is what you want, but you have also decided that you enjoy your job and have no plans to leave should your supervisor say no to this idea. You figure you have nothing to lose because the answer is always no if you don't ask. So what's the first thing you have to do now that you know what you want and why? You have to do your homework. Research inside the company. Are there precedents you could cite in support of your request? If so, take the time to connect with these individuals and ask them pointed questions to build your case. If there's no one internally that's already doing it, you might look outside of the company for examples where working from home has been a success. Investigate Working Mother Magazine's special issue, perhaps on 100 best companies to work for, and see which companies offer similar programs. Call these companies to gather supportive data. You might even ask them for specific individuals that have worked this program successfully and connect with them too. After you've done this immediate homework, you want to prepare a written proposal. Think through all the ways your working from home might benefit the business. Can you work more efficiently? Extend customer service hours later or earlier? Devote hours to work that would otherwise be spent commuting? Summarize these reasons to make a business case. Next, you need to anticipate every scenario and possible objection. Will you miss staff meetings? If so, how do you plan to handle that? Will coworkers have to cover more office tasks in your absence? Is there a risk that an urgent customer need will arise and you're not around? Explain how you'll solve those problems. Set up a way you and your supervisor can evaluate your work-at-home setup. In other words, create measurable objectives. Then propose a pilot project, such as for 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, you'll sit down together and assess your setup. See if this pilot period worked. Finally, present your plan. Then you can revisit after the pilot project. It's like being an attorney. You're building a rock-solid case for what you want. Now, if you do that, do you think you up the odds of getting what you want? Yeah, it's not easy, but it's not hard either. It's effort and energy. Some of you listening may be thinking, I'll just drive to the office instead. But think about it. If you really buckled down, consider how long it would take you to do that homework. During the next cold, snowy day when you're not getting out to heat up your car and instead you're in your cozy jammies, you'll see it's not that big of a price to pay. And that's what too many people do. They say things like, I wish I could work from home, rather than choosing to do their homework and negotiate. Want to know why people don't go after what they want? Because it requires they do their homework. But isn't the amount of time it would take to prepare this proposal, for example, worth the result of getting what you want? That's why strategy number 2 states, preparation drives results.
This book is continued on Disc 9.